So, traffic across the membranes. Remember that our cell membranes are selectively permeable. That means they are a good barrier, but they will let some things cross. Okay, and we have three types of passage that we're going to be talking about. Direct passage through the lipid bilayer. This is always a passive process. It does not require energy. Then we'll talk about passage mediated by transport proteins, one we just heard about, which is water movement across the membrane. And sometimes these are passive, sometimes they're active, and these can be coupled, and we'll talk about examples in all of those categories. And then we also have the third type, which is vesicular transport, which is really to sort of bulk movement across the membrane. And this is always active. It always takes energy to do this. Okay, we're going to look at examples, or we're going to talk about these now separately. And we'll start with the first one, which is direct passage through the lipid bilayer. And this is limited to a relatively small number of molecules. Hydrophobic molecules like steroids actually go directly through the bilayer quite easily. Does anybody know why? Yes? Yeah, so hydrophobic molecules actually are pretty good at getting into the hydrophobic region of the membrane. Sometimes it's actually hard for them to get out, so they get stuck in that hydrophobic region. But the hydrophobic molecules are pretty good at getting across the membrane because they are attracted to that hydrophobic region, which are the tails of the phospholipids. Okay, then we have small hydrocarbons. By that I mean chains of carbons that have hydrogens attached. Those go through pretty easily because these are not charged. They're also very hydrophobic. And this is a saturated small hydrocarbon. What would an unsaturated small hydrocarbon look like?
Two bonds.
Right, it would have a double bond and a kink in it. Both of these will go quite well across a hydrophobic membrane. Also, nonpolar small molecules. By nonpolar, we'll talk about more about this in the third week, but these are molecules that are not charged. So molecules like carbon dioxide and oxygen will flow across the lipid bilayer, and in all of these cases, they all diffuse down their concentration gradient. That is the only direction they can run. They go from high concentration down to low concentration. Because these processes do not involve energy, they cannot go up the concentration gradient. So there's no energy involved, and this is always passive transport. Okay, then we have the second class, which is movement mediated by transport proteins. And this allows passage of hydrophilic molecules, charged molecules, and we have charged ions like sodium and chloride. Those have to go through proteins. And water is also a charged molecule. That's one of the reasons why it needs its own protein to go across the membrane. And then also some of the larger molecules are mediated by this transport process, but their vesicular transport is also important for large molecules. Okay, now there is a specific protein for each substance. So an aquaporin channel will not conduct sucrose. A protein that will let sucrose go through will not let its structural isomer fructose go through. They're extremely specific. So for everything that needs to go across the cell membrane through a transport process, they have to have their own protein. Okay,